Hello, my name is Justin Bright. Welcome to Kerbal Space Program version 1.8.1 in my next small step RP-1 career mode playthrough. And we are visiting the Hermes 1 that is heading on towards Mercury. Eventually. First we have to go by Venus, and that is what we are working on right now. So, I'm just checking in on the trajectory we have, and it's not looking super great. Actually, instead of playing with that, why don't I just... There we go. Yeah, so what I'm looking for now is just a way to get us into a very close orbit, or a close flyby, to maximize the gravity assistance that we are going to get from our flyby of Venus. The thing that I'm looking for most out of this burn, or out of this flyby, is to reduce our inclination relative to Venus's orbit. So I would love it if, like, this looks about right. Like, it looks like I'm just about in the right exact plane. I did a little bit of work to make that the case when I set this flyby up, but it feels very perfect. So I'm very happy about that. Ideally, that gets us into the right inclination for a second flyby of Venus, which I'm going to use to then maybe change my inclination, but mostly try to continue reducing my orbit, because you can see that we have reduced it quite a bit, but there is more to go. So those are the important parts on this particular flyby, because you can see I'm coming in pretty darn inclined, because the relative inclination of Earth to Venus is... it's not like super huge, hugely different. Like, there's a pretty significant difference, but it's not like so much. Like, my inclination coming down at this angle is as high as it is because I kind of lofted a bit in changing my inclination on the way to this point, if that makes sense. So that is what is going on there, and this is just going to be a little tiny burn, and this has an engine with as many burns as I need, so everything there is working out just fine. So let's go ahead and get this next node executed. Alright, and we are coming up on the actual burn now, and it should be just a very short and small thing. And at this point we are getting pretty close to the sun, or at least we're getting a lot closer to the sun than we were when we were out around Earth. And there's the burn, there we go. See how we did. So our solar power is, the little solar panels that we have are gonna be very good and last us for a very long time. So we'll just turn towards the sun once again, and hold that position, and then we can make our adjustments based on that. All right, so there we go. We have a very close flyby, so I'm just going to raise it up to like 210 kilometers. That sounds fine. The difference between 100 and 200 kilometers on a flyby like this is not going to change your trajectory all that much in any kind of noticeable way. So, yeah, there we go with that one. And yeah, it looks like it gets us just a really nice, very close to matched inclination orbit compared to Venus. All right, so that is about that, and that is going to get us a good gravity assist, and then once we're there, I will do some work on trying to figure out what my next flyby is going to be, and it's not going to be very long. We only have 33 days until that is ready to go, but until then, we are getting the Mars exploration system out of the sphere of influence of Earth, and so I will need to mess with that. All right, here we go, the Mars exploration system cruising out of the system, farther and farther away from Earth. Excellent. Yeah, I'm really excited about this one. This is going to be a ton of fun, I think. And even if it doesn't work the way that I hope it does, I think this is going to be a lot of really interesting stuff. One thing, or we're going to learn a lot of interesting stuff. One thing that somebody said at the comments of my last video was that it's not going to be too long until I have a vessel or a spaceship or a launch vehicle that is able to launch this whole thing in a single go, and that's already true. I just don't have the money for it. I've put together a Paladin 4B, so I've got two Paladin 4s, and I'm just running out of names, basically, but I've got a Paladin 4 that is 2 F1 engines, and then I have a Paladin 4B that is 4 F1 engines, because I wanted to reserve Paladin 5 for, you know, the big one. The Paladin 4 with 4 engines is able to lift 127 tons to low Earth orbit and 41 to a translunar injection trajectory, and this whole thing here is about 30 tons. So I would definitely have been able to launch this whole thing on a single launch all together, packed up, instead of doing that whole orbital assembly thing. Where is the fun in that? I had a great time putting this together and making sure that this thing worked, so I have absolutely no qualms about the way that we have done this. So let's take a look. I just want to make sure that our entry into Mars is everything that I hoped it would be. Focus target and zoom on in. That's pretty funky, but RCS will save the day. So, let's see. Yeah, so something like that will be able to get us into the correct orbit when we arrive. So, that is what I was looking to do, and that's all I needed to do was just to make sure that we had the correct trajectory, and it looks like we've still got it. So that's fantastic, and we only have to wait a little bit more than a year of travel for this to arrive. Man, I've got so many things entering now. 399 days, and that is going to arrive in the Martian system, and then we will be having all kinds of fun. I don't have to point this in any particular direction because we don't have any cryogenic propellants on board, and everything is powered by RTGs, so we are good to just go on with our lives. All right, we have a bonus launch for Mars with the Martian Moonhopper 2. We are launching in just about 5 seconds, and I am going to be basically chasing after a rapidly receding launch window. We have ignition and liftoff instantly, as usual. But yeah, so this is going to be a counterpart to the Martian Moonhopper that we sent before. But I have one extra trick up my sleeve. With my previous Martian Moonhopper, it died pretty unceremoniously, which was a big bummer. Like, it just disappeared, and I didn't even notice that it had gone. Like, it must have collided with lumpy Phobos, or was it Deimos? I think it was Phobos. And then I wasn't able to go back to Deimos to get more science and that whole thing. So we just kind of lost it, and it was very sudden, and we didn't get to say farewell or anything like that. But one thing that I recall from that mission was when I was bouncing around between places, I actually had a lot more Delta V than I thought I did in the transfer bus. So the thing that I can take from that is that if I built a new mission, a better mission with all the latest science and all the latest stuff, which is why this mission came so far after the transfer window, then perhaps, just perhaps, I would also be able to include a sample return from Phobos and or Deimos. How cool would that be? So this could, if it arrives around the same time that the other spacecraft do at Mars, it should be able to do its mission of jumping around on Mars or Phobos and Deimos, and then deliver some science over to the Mars Exploration System spacecraft to bring back home to Earth, and then drop it back into the system without having to do any of the other stuff. Like, if you've already got something with a docking port on the front that is going to be coming back to Earth, why not use it for absolutely everything you can? All right, so the main boosters are winding down, our core stage is winding up, those are separated off, and we are now pushing on towards orbit with a Titan 3E spacecraft, or launch vehicle, that is bringing this on up. One thing is, I could bring this down, actually, because this can definitely pop off a lot sooner than I have been popping it off. So yeah, that's kind of the plan, is I'm hoping to chase after the receding launch window so that I can bring this into orbit and do a whole bunch more science, new science around Phobos and Deimos. Just staging that manually. I don't know why it doesn't want to kick it off even though we're above 100 kilometers, but that's fine. Have hot stage and ignition of the upper stage, and off we go. Yeah, the Titan 3E is a really nifty launch system, if you ask me. All right, now we are flipping on from our upper stage to our uppermost stage, or our second stage to our upper stage of the RL-10s, and launching off, and hopefully we will have a little bit of fuel left to actually get us out there. Because I feel like this is not as much Delta V as I thought we were going to have, but if we have to use some of the fuel from our upper stage here, our actual payload here, then I guess that's going to have to be fine. But yeah, we have about 90 seconds left of burn, and then we will see what we have left as far as making this transfer. So yeah, this is all of the latest science on my end, basically having rebuilt the entire Martian Moonhopper spacecraft from scratch, but just taking everything that I've learned and moving on with it. And we'll talk about that more in just a moment, because we are just about in orbit. And there we go. Perfect. So let's go ahead and switch now to Mars and see what our transfer looks like with a capture burn. Yeah, we're talking a lot of Delta V borrowed from our upper stage, but is what it is. I'm pretty sure this is one of those things where I planned for that because it's not going to take this entire tank of fuel to insert into orbit of Mars. So that is just fine. That is one way that I have used to get around sending a bigger upper stage, is just borrowing a little bit from a payload stage. So yeah, that is what we will plan to do. Why this is telling me 5,300, because that doesn't seem right. If I don't include the capture burn, there, that sounds a little bit more right. And let's go ahead and take a look at the target and see what this looks like around Mars. There we go. That looks like it gets us there, and that's really what matters, right? Does it look like getting into orbit? Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so that should be just fine. Yeah, so that's a total of about 6,000 meters per second of Delta V to get into the something kind of like an appropriate orbit. And that is going to leave us with about 1,800 meters per second left, because we've got 7,900 or so. So with adjustments and everything else, that should work out just fine. Because as I recall, it only cost me a couple hundred meters per second of Delta V to do all of the maneuvers around Mars in between the different Martian moons. So yeah, here we go. Let's go ahead and get this burn moving, because we have no time to waste. All right, we are firing up the engine and preparing on our way. Everything is looking good so far, and we have the trajectory plan that is going to eat up a whole bunch of our all of our Delta V on the main stage, and then we are going to carry on with the with our upper stage here, and that should all be ready to rock. So yeah, so this was a lot of fun to build, because it's the basic idea of like what I did with the Martian Moonhopper, but then just doing it again, but doing it as better as I am able to with everything that we have learned. So it's using solar panels on the upper stage, or the transfer stage, I should say. It has a little bit more power, and with that it has hopefully enough power to actually last through the nights. I think I've calculated that properly. But the solar panels are huge. Huge. The latest technology are Tech Level 2, I think Tech Level 2, solar panels that are able to really do a lot of power generation. So that is what we've got going on there, and it's got all the communications that it's going to need to do all the transferring and moving around. We'll talk more about the probe itself when we get there, but we've also upgraded everything to level 5. Level 5 technology for my communication, so that should be good. We are just about to have to switch engines here in about 10 more seconds. And we have the different antennas that we'll be using to actually connect properly and use as relays and all of that. And separate and ignite the upper stage, and we are continuing off on our way. And obviously there'll be some correction when we get there, but that is just fine. Yeah, so now as I've broken this off, you can start to see some of the new science experiments that I've attached. So I've got all sorts of new science that I've attached, and it's all from the new nodes that I have unlocked in just the last 60 days or so. So we've got a 2-channel infrared radiometer, We've got this ultraviolet spectrometer. We've got this big, bulky, improved TV camera hanging off the side, which looks cool as hell. Flux gate magnetometer boon. Like, it's starting to sound like incredibly sci-fi, the stuff that we have here. And we have just one. I swear, I thought I duplicated this. I thought we had 2 soil samplers. This is supposed to be in 2x symmetry, but I guess that's not how it turned out. Whoops. Shoot. Okay. Is this even gonna, like... Man, that's really annoying, actually. I'm a little bit worried about the balance of this craft. I'm not sure it's actually going to work without the other one on here, because this is definitely supposed to be in 2x symmetry. Goodness gracious. Yeah, I'll bet you that the that MechJeb is just kind of like compensating a little bit with this. But man, okay, that's fine. I guess I'm just going to have to learn to live with that. That is pretty unfortunate, but okay, that's fine. Let's finish up this burn, and then we will get into the sun, where we can see this a little bit better. All right, so this little adjustment is going to get us right into the correct inclination to meet up with the moons of Mars. Let's go ahead and execute that node. And here we go. Boom. All right. Pretty damn good, if you ask me. And there we go, nice and tight at 132 kilometers, which, is that too tight? I think that's too tight. Ha! No, it's perfect. Wow, that's so perfect. Yeah, so that gives us our absolute lowest apoarian, which we can use to insert into our orbit, which is going to cost us, now that we have everything all settled, 1,800 meters per second, as we expected, and that will get us there with 2,000, or about 1,900 meters per second of delta V to spare to do the transfers and landings, because there's 3 other objectives. So objective 1 is land on Deimos, objective 2 is land on Phobos, objective 3 is meet up with the Mars exploration system before it leaves, so that it can transfer over its science payload. Yes, and because we only have the, whoops, did I just, oh wow, okay, cool, stop doing that, please. Because I screwed up and only sent one of the 2 soil samplers on board this spacecraft, we are going to have to be careful about like not sending back all of the science. So I'm going to try to, let's see, I wonder if I can do that right now. We have a ton of science to do, so let's actually go through this once we get into the sun. All right, there we go, out in the sun. Let's put the sun down probably. And we can start by extending these big, lovely solar panels. And I think it's up in this case. So yes, nice big solar panels that are going to work just fine out in orbit of Mars. And because these are so large, we have like 10 square meters of solar panel space. Because we have so much, then we are going to be able to really make sure that we have plenty of power. We have here a nice big S-band antenna, which is just lovely. We have a Communotron 16 on both the orbiter and on the lander, which is in here somewhere. There it is. Can extend that for now because it doesn't actually change the power consumption. It's going to eat all the power regardless of whether it is actually quote unquote on, which is a pain in the butt, but it's also, you know, it's fine. It is what it is. So yeah, that's all that. We have all that, and that is going just great. And we are still, even in the orbit of Earth, gaining, well, in the orbit of Earth, we are gaining 1 electric charge per second. Out in the orbit of Mars, it's going to be less than that. It's going to be a little bit tighter, but that should be okay still. The lander itself should be mostly self-powered with the pair of Snap 19 RTGs that we have on the side. But yeah, so that's the orbiter. That's pretty much all there is to that. It's got a nice long avionics collar here with a couple science experiments put in that are not that big of a deal, but whatever. So we'll just turn on some of these experiments just in case we have anything fun. There we go. And then we can look at the other experiments and things that we have on here. So if I aim my camera, then we can take a closer look at this probe. Yeah, that'll do. So yeah, we have a bunch of stuff stapled onto the side of here. We have the soil mechanics surface sampler over on this side. We have the big improved TV camera that is able to do a lot of really good science out of that thing. We have the fluxgate magnetometer boom. We have the solar wind plasma analyzer. And that's all we have stapled to the outside. Everything else is packed inside, where we have mass spectrometry 3, temperature and pressure scan, and yeah, so that represents all of the newest science that we have unlocked. There is more to come later on, but that still represents a significant increase in the science that we have available to us. So I am just going to turn on all the science that we have, and we will begin doing these experiments on our way out, and that'll get us science from around Earth and also from the sun, which is very cool. But yeah, so this is a really neat thing. One thing that you'll notice is I actually included tiny landing legs. I've discovered that the micro strut landing legs are known to be janky and buggy, but the new thing that I found out is that the regular LT1 landing struts, you can just actually scale them down so that they're tiny and actually this size to this probe, which is nice. Although I think I underestimated, or I think I was incorrect about what direction this giant wonky camera is going to point. So that's going to shove itself into the ground a little bit as we're doing science. But, you know, that is also what it is. I have taken your advice and I have gotten rid of the engine on the lander. So now it just has the small RCS thrusters, quads on the side here that is able to move this thing around and lift it up off of the tiny bodies that we will be visiting. So there's that. Most of the fuel is packed into these little radial tanks that are circling a inline reaction wheel, which is going to be very helpful for moving us around and rotating us and making sure that we are aligned properly for our various landings. So yeah, there we go. That is Martian Moonhopper 2. I'm really excited about this system. This should be a pretty darn fun, and it represents all the latest and greatest science that we have to offer. And so this is going to be kind of like a regular science bus for me going forward. But for now, that is about that, and yeah, I'm excited to get this going. So let's just move this now so that we get out of the sphere of influence of Earth, because I think our next thing is Hermes 1 Mercury is about to hit Venus's sphere of influence. All right, so we will be arriving at Mars about a month after the Mars exploration system gets there, which is just fine because we will in fact be waiting a good long time for the transfer window back home. So we are not in any rush to complete our science objectives there. I think we have something like a year. I really couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but that's something that we will figure out when we get there. So now let's go go back to the Hermes 1 to check in on our Venus flyby. All right, so here we are approaching Venus as science comes in from our Martian Moonhopper. So yeah, we are really doing a lot of really cool interplanetary exploration once again, which I think is my favorite thing. I really enjoy doing the historical, like, moon landing stuff and crewed flights, but exploring other planets is really where it's at in this game, and it's something that I hope to do with crew at a later time. Like, I'm really looking forward to building a space station around Mars and being able to do all that cool stuff, but all of this exploration of the real solar system and the real planets is just a ton of fun, so I'm really quite enjoying it. Okay, so we are now in the sphere of influence of Venus, and it looks like our orbit is just about okay. Let's just double check that this is not going to kill us. It is just a tut. Oh no, it's not. It's just very, very close to killing us. Yeah, 148. The atmosphere on Venus is at 145, so that is just fine. So let's scroll out a little bit here, and I'm trying to figure out how the hell I can see what my next encounter with Venus is after this one before I leave the sphere of influence. It's something that I've been struggling with. Yeah, it doesn't want to let me set Venus as a target when I'm here, which I guess makes sense. But yeah, I think it's just when we get out of this orbit, we are going to have to take a look at that. But yeah, with the adjustments that I've made, it's going to get us in a pretty close approximation of Venus's orbit. We still have more work to do as far as adjusting that, but I think that's just going to be something that I have to do on our way past. So yeah, let's just see if we can't get any science on our way. Cosmic ray science on our way through, infrared radiometry, magnetic scan, mass spectrometry is already going, and the RPWS is also running. So yeah, get some good science on our way past. But yeah, there's nothing more for this one to do. I guess I just need to see what our trajectory looks like once we get out of this. All right, so nothing to do with our spacecraft here except for flying past and watching Venus go by. So I'll just talk for a minute about the Messenger mission that I'm kind of sort of emulating in a way. It was a spacecraft that did this really complicated set of orbital maneuvers to eventually orbit Mercury without using as massive of a launcher, even as I'd done here. But it was there to look at the surface composition of Mercury, look into the geological history, details about its internal magnetic field, polar deposits, and it wrapped up that whole thing by slamming into its surface so that it wouldn't contaminate anything, which is, you know, just a lovely thing. It's always good to make sure your spacecraft have a solid end date, I should say. But yeah, so it had a whole bunch of science experiments. It launched in 2004, but as I mentioned before, it took until 2011 for it to actually arrive at Mercury, because it was doing this big orbital dance between the planets, similar to what we are going to be doing. Fix them clouds up. Yeah, there we go. That looks even better. As we swing past the clouds of Mercury. And we are like just above the surface here. Oh no, what happened? Oh, we are just above the surface. I don't know what happened, but I screwed up. We are actually going to impact the surface here, or the top of the atmosphere, if I don't push up right now. So let's just do that real quick. Oh my gosh. Alright, so just burning off a bit of delta V to get us above 145 kilometers, and that should be okay. Gosh, I think just my rotating around to point at the sun pushed my my periapsis down to below the atmospheric height, which would have destroyed the spacecraft like just so easily. Ooh, that's scary. Not the way I would have wanted to do that. That was 100 meters per second of delta V that I could have used for other stuff, but I guess this is going to have to be fine because I was not paying attention. Anyways, so yeah, it took about 7 years of orbital dancing for the Messenger spacecraft to actually make it out to Mercury, and then it spent 4 years doing science in orbit of Mercury before it slammed into the surface and ended that mission quite definitively. But yeah, it did so with 1 flyby of Earth and 2 flybys of Venus, and then 3 more of Mercury itself before it actually arrived there and was able to push into its final orbit. I've launched with a slightly larger launch vehicle than what Messenger used. I think it used like a Delta II, so a much more advanced rocket, but I think less Delta V total than what I threw it with. I have no idea. But the other thing is that I think I've packed on more fuel on my little travel bus here. So I'm hoping that that is going to make the difference in being able to get into orbit around Mercury eventually. And there we go. We have now exited the sphere of influence of Venus. Okay, so let's see what our orbit looks like. You can see that it's pretty similar. And actually what I can do is I can bring up the rendezvous planner. There we go. And you can see that we have a relative inclination of 0.16 degrees, which is just lovely, just really lovely. Of course, our closest approach is right now, so that's something. But after that, we are going to want to figure out what we can do. So let's, right here, and then I just want to see, we'll just start playing with this. And 1, 2, I think it's about that many orbits, gets us pretty close. And this is kind of our closest approach. So yeah, we're going to want to do something to bring this in a little bit. All right, so this is what I've come up with so far. We have a pretty long way to go before I get back to a place where I can rendezvous with Venus once again. And it's not going to happen on my current orbit for a very, very long time. So if I were to just sit in this orbit, the same orbit, this is our nearest best bet, and that's still pretty far away, and that's in 1,000 days, so a little bit more than 3 years. That gets us to about this point, which is not good enough. And so that to get to that, to actually transfer to this point would actually cost me, in that same time frame, looks like it's going to cost me something like 2,000 meters per second of delta V, according to MacLeod. It changes my trajectory pretty dramatically, but yeah, that gets us an intercept that I could then do some stuff with, but that feels like a lot of delta V to spend. I feel like I should be a little bit closer and able to do something a little bit easier from here. So let's see if I go even further out, if there's another time that just happens to be better. All right, so this is what that looks like, but that's about 10 years from now instead, and that's a lot easier to get to. But woof, that is a long time to wait for this kind of an encounter. And the way that we're entering into this into the sphere of influence of Venus actually makes it not super helpful. Yeah, because look at that. It mostly throws us radial as opposed to pushing us retrograde. So retrograde would be that way. So that's actually the way that we want to go. But that's not where we're getting any kind of gravity assist. So if we go in a way that gets us a big radial push, you can see it kind of shoves our orbit out in this direction and in this direction, which is not actually helpful in our overall goal. So that's not a good burn either. Oh, here's an even closer one, but that's about 15 years out. And again, if I spend a couple hundred meters per second of delta V, should get us-ish there. So what I'm saying is that this orbit is not actually helpful in a ton of ways. So what I'm going to do instead is at our perihelion here, I am going to actually cut our velocity by about 300 meters per second of delta V, which puts our orbit underneath that of Venus, which is going to change our opportunities in the future. So yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to then, after I've made this burn, we will be orbiting a little bit faster, and hopefully our orbit opportunities will change, and then I can, from our descending node, decide when a good time would be to jump up to our ascending node or vice versa, so that we can match our orbit, and also our orbit will be touching down here still, and that will give us some opportunities, hopefully. Or no, our orbit is not touching here by any stretch of the imagination. So yeah, we will be moving up a little bit here to make sure that we actually touch at the ascending node, and then that will give us some perhaps some opportunities. So yeah, just a reminder that this is just kind of a learning opportunity for me. I haven't used any flyby finders or anything like that to actually make this a useful exercise, and that is showing at the moment. But this is kind of what looks like my best opportunity right now, because that burn that I would be getting to in about 1100 days, or that encounter that I would be getting in about 1100 days, we would be behind Venus by a good chunk of distance, and I'm hoping that this slight reduction in our orbital altitude over the sun comparatively to Venus is going to help us catch up just a little bit faster and be a little bit closer to that. So once I make this burn, I'll be able to play with that some more, but that is probably the last time I will look at this until something actually interesting happens with this craft. I will keep playing around with it, but whether or not I get anything out of that, I guess we'll just leave up to finding out later on. All right, so that is just about that. I am just checking over our science and stuff, and everything seems to be just fabulous. So yeah, we are on our way. This thing is in for a long, long journey ahead of it, and yeah, so we will see if that actually anything comes of that. All right, and so the last thing that we will end with is deep space communications, which we are just coming up on the finish of, and that gets us that technology. Come on down here and we can see that gets us a 4-meter parabolic antenna that we can attach to spacecraft. That's lovely, lovely. Comms tech level 6, and the level 7 tracking station, which we should be able to upgrade for just 150,000 more funds. Boop, there we go, and that is going to help us with all of these wonderful deep space outer planets exploration missions that we are doing. That is going to allow us to use smaller dishes with lower power, which is going to be a lovely thing. So yeah, there we go. We've also got a little bit of science, and I've just been kind of spending this as I go. Not very monumental, but yeah, we are up to almost 700 points spent in the vehicle assembly building, matching up what we have done in R&D. And my R&D still feels like it's going pretty darn fast. I'm pretty happy about that. But we do need to spend 6 million funds on the unlimited research science limit, because we are actually running out of nodes fairly quickly. Like, we've got a lot queued up, but this is everything, like everything, and there's some things that are going to go a little bit faster than others on here. So yeah, that's something that I need to deal with. Other than that, let's see. We've got yeah, we've got the most interesting thing that we have coming up is multi-100-watt RTGs, better communications, and early nuclear propulsion. That, with improved capsules and early space stations, is going to be the gateway technologies that are going to allow us to really do some cool stuff, sending out crews very, very far beyond the orbit of the moon. And that is something that we will be getting into a bit later on. But right now, I am just trying to finish up some of the million contracts we have. We do have a crew duration record for 30 days, so that's something that I need to do with a space station. So I think I might test out our new space station in orbit of Earth before I move it on to the orbit of the moon, because we do have a brand new space station that is getting ready to go. So I may test it here before I test it out there. Although I do have both contracts. Well, actually, hold on. Does this say orbital, suborbital, or escape trajectory? Doesn't say where I need to stay in orbit. So yeah, I might be able to do this and my lunar space station at the same time, because this is also going to require 30 days of keeping crew on board. I don't know why it keeps unclicking, but yeah, the lunar space station and that crew count is going to help us a lot as far as getting our cash together goes. I have a new orbital flight with 3 crew after having failed the last one, which is why we have any money at all at this point. So we'll be doing that with my new Apollo craft. We have landings on Deimos, Mars, and Phobos, and the Phobos sample return, and the Mars rover, all part of my big Mars exploration system mission. and Mars Orbital Science Probe. We have the Jupiter flyby heading out, Saturn flyby, and the Vesta orbiter all heading, all have craft streaking out in that direction. The one that is conspicuously absent is the Mercury orbiter, which I'm not going to accept until and unless it actually looks like I'm going to get the darn thing, because I am not willing to pay that $540,000 contract failure cost just for a $360,000 fund advance. So that is what I'm thinking there. It looks like we actually have a staff your my old space station mission, which might be kind of fun. It's a cheap way to do some stuff. But yeah, so that is kind of what we have coming up. I'm really hoping that we can actually finish some of these missions here pretty quick, because I am going broke. We have such big spacecraft that are coming up that I really need a lot of money to be able to tool and build those things. I misspoke in a previous episode. I called my latest Paladin, the Paladin that I launched the Mars Exploration System C on, a 6-meter rocket. It's actually 8. So I have moved to the 8-meter diameter, which is lovely, but we are going to need to move to the 10-meter diameter if we really want to go any further than that. And that's expensive. This is all very, very expensive, and this is going to cost me 6 million funds, and yeah, all these other things are just costing us a ton of cash. So yeah, hopefully we start knocking out some of these missions so that we can fund our future exploration, but that is going to have to wait for a future episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please let me know what you think down in the comments below, and I will see you next time.